Why is our political system so polarized? An innocuous way to answer is that people are naturally very divided on various issues, hence, polarization is natural or inevitable in some sense. But with some shrewd observation, we can notice that major political parties benefit by keeping the environment polarized because this will automatically ensure them the support of voters who hate their opposition. That is, they can strategically eliminate most of the competition if they maintain the polarized environment. As a consequence, this will make it impossible for well qualified third party or independent candidates to emerge. So, now who is to be blamed here? It's easy to point the finger at the corrupt nature of the politicians, but that's not fair because the primary blame should be placed on the system. Our voting system incentivizes polarization, particularly the plurality voting system. We instead need a voting system that would penalize polarization. This is possible when we can measure if each candidate in the election is polarizing or not, which in turn is only possible when the voters are allowed to explicitly register their negative preferences for each candidate. Alternate voting systems like the ranked choice voting or the approval voting methods, though a significant improvement over plurality method, they do not explicitly capture the negative preferences of voters and they do nothing to curtail the polarization. In this video, we will focus on the non-negative voting system or NNV for short. Please watch the introductory video given in the link for a more elaborate description of this voting system. In this voting system, each voter gets to cast a total of 10 votes distributed as positive and negative across various candidates. For instance, a voter can cast 0, +7, -1 and -2 for 4 candidates A, B, C and D. The only constraint is that the magnitudes should add up to 10, as in here 0 +7 +1 +2, which is 10. After gathering the votes from all the voters, the net positive votes for each candidate and the net negative votes for each candidate are separately collected by adding over all the voters. The crucial point here is that the positive and negative votes are not mixed. They are kept separately for each candidate so that we can view the candidates from a two-dimensional perspective. We will know by how much each candidate is polarizing by looking at the ratio n divided by p, which we shall call polarity. An unpolarizing candidate would be someone who doesn't receive any negative votes, so the polarity would be 0. During the final evaluation of the candidates, to determine who wins the election, the candidates will each be penalized explicitly for their polarity, as we define a metric W in this fashion, and the candidate with the highest value of W eventually wins. The basic claim I make here is that the candidates would refrain from polarizing campaign behavior to avoid incurring negative votes to reduce their polarity. But hold on. We asked the voters to explicitly reflect on their dislikes for candidates and cast negative votes. Wouldn't that incite more tension and polarization? So my claim that polarization would reduce could sound very counterintuitive to some people. Fair enough. But had there been a straightforward solution to reduce polarization, then it would have already been solved. But that's not the case. So it's pretty reasonable to analyze this counterintuitive solution with an open mind. The negative votes can be of two types: genuine negative votes when the voter genuinely dislikes the candidate, or strategic negative votes when the voter has a preferred candidate but strategically casts negative votes to an opponent to enhance the winning chance of the preferred candidate. The genuine ones are welcome because that is exactly the reason we have introduced them, to record the true negative feelings against a candidate, measure the polarity and penalize the candidate appropriately. But the strategic negative votes are not welcome because the voters are trying to game the system. We can, however, not explicitly prevent the voters from strategizing. After all, it is basically the voters' free choice. However, we can constrain the system such that the strategic negative voting would backfire on the voters' true preference. For instance, let's say A is your preferred candidate and you consider B as a potential competition. If you cast -4 votes for B, you will have at most +6 votes remaining for A, because the total has to be 10. If your negative votes for B are genuine, then you wouldn't have a problem because you expressed your real choice. But if your negative votes for B are strategic, then you have reduced the available positive votes for A. This wouldn't matter if there are only 2 candidates, but when there are multiple viable candidates, then it would open up the opportunity for one of the others to win, precisely because A did not receive enough positive votes from you. Basically, this creates a very confusing situation on how to strategically use the negative votes. If you have one preferred candidate and no genuine negative preferences, You are better off casting the entire 10 votes as positive votes to that candidate rather than trying to strategize with negative votes. Further, we can manipulate the evaluation metric W. We can decrease the value of C below 1 and correspondingly increase the value of B to depreciate the relative importance of negative votes when they are overused. This will further discourage the voters from strategically using the negative votes. Please refer to the published article given below for mathematical details. Essentially, it would be impossible for the voter to strategically use negative votes to benefit a preferred candidate as long as the parameters C and B are chosen within these constraints in the box. This is with the assumption that all candidates are perceived to be equally strong. But even if that's not the case, it's fine. We just need to stay significantly under the limits of the constraint. Of course, these arguments work only when there are multiple viable candidates contesting in the election. And the good thing is, that itself will encourage well-qualified third-party or independent candidates to contest in the election. Now let's shift focus onto the candidates' behavior. Would their campaign behavior be less polarizing? Would the candidates avoid demonizing each other and avoid divisive rhetorics? These questions are difficult to quantify. So let's phrase the question as, would the candidates' campaign focus on getting positive votes by talking about constructive issues or focus on delivering negative votes to the opponents? For practical purposes, we shall consider this as a tractable definition of the polarizing campaign. Let's say candidate A actively campaigns against candidate B with the intention of delivering negative votes to B. This will of course create heated tension and rivalry between the supporters of A and supporters of B. But what kind of cost-benefit analysis should A do before indulging in such polarizing campaigns? B would certainly get some negative votes because of this, but a lot of those would come from the supporters of A, simply because supporters of A are the people who are most receptive to the campaign messages of A. However, these could have been delivered as positive votes to A, meaning A has lost some potential positive votes. On the flip side, some supporters of B or even other neutral voters may want to punish A and cast negative votes for A. So, A would lose some potential positive votes and gain negative votes. Is it worth it in order to deliver some negative votes to B? And in this confusion, a different candidate could emerge victorious. This would be a big problem for A when there are multiple viable candidates. Now, notice that this argument tacitly assumes that A really intends to win the election, but maybe A doesn't care about winning and is only interested in making sure that B does not win. In that case, if A has sufficiently many supporters who would listen to A, then it is well justified that B should not win anyway, because there is a significant part of electorate genuinely against B. Also, it's not far-fetched to imagine some sneaky arrangements. Maybe A is working with a hidden agenda to help elect another candidate, X. Or maybe A isn't even a candidate contesting in the election. A could be a media hitman or a social media influencer working in favor of X with a primary task to demonize B. Even in these scenarios of sneaky arrangements, half of our previous argument still remains valid. That is, X will lose potential positive votes. Why? Because if there are enough voters listening to A, then their votes could have potentially been delivered as positive votes for X, but they are being lost as negative votes for B. This loss in positive votes for X by itself could be significant enough to let a third-party candidate win. However, in this sneaky arrangement, X may not get as many negative votes because X is not directly involved in the polarizing campaign by hiding behind A. But if the connection between A and X is revealed, then X would receive significant amount of negative votes from the supporters of B. In this day and age with the social media everywhere, my guess is that it would be very difficult to hide such sneaky arrangements. Now, to summarize, it is more risky and much less rewarding for candidates to indulge in polarizing campaigns, either directly or in a sneaky way. Although superficially it may seem counterintuitive to claim that allowing negative votes would reduce polarization, the constraints imposed on the system renders this effect. To contrast, in a voting system with just positive votes, as in plurality voting system, the major parties are incentivized to indulge in polarizing campaigns so that they can maintain their dominance by attracting the support of haters of the opponent.